The Giants have kind of a shocking amount of players reaching free agency, including pretty much all of their starting rotation except for Logan Webb. And so on today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to answer some questions that you guys proposed on Twitter, basically asking about free agency and getting us set for the offseason, wondering what the Giants are going to do, what my thoughts are on the free agent class, and, my top targets in free agency as well. So all of that is coming up next on today's Mailbag Monday edition of Locked On Giants.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily San Francisco Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Giants Baseball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Kaspick, and on this show we provide daily episodes Monday through Friday talking about the San Francisco Giants in a way that's data-driven and rational, but also simple, passionate, and accessible to all. I'm a former contributor for the baseball statistics and analysis websites Beyond the Box Score and Rotographs. I've been podcasting about the Giants since 2015, and I'm a lifelong fan. Thank you so much for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, which now includes YouTube, so check us out there. And coming up on today's show, it's Mailbag Monday, which is, I think, something we're going to do as a theme throughout the offseason, unless there's some big piece of news that we need to absolutely get to. But during the season, we couldn't exactly do that because there were games over the weekend and there was always stuff to talk about. But moving forward, Mondays are going to be our mailbag day until further notice. So anyway, jumping into the questions, Aaron wants to know just general free agent thoughts and predictions. Well, Aaron, I'm glad you asked because there are a lot of thoughts that I have about free agency this year. It is a very, very interesting year for the San Francisco Giants to be, for a fan to follow the San Francisco Giants in free agency. And so much of that has to do with the fact that they have so much money coming off the books. And I've been saying that they have about $65 million committed for 2022, but actually I'm overstating that number. I'm using roster resource, and frankly, I'm not exactly sure how they get to that $65 million number. I've crunched the numbers myself for several times, and it's not clear exactly to me how they're getting there. The Giants actually only have, I think it's about $45 million committed for 2022. Like, they absolutely have to pay certain players that amount. Then, of course, there's arbitration, and arbitration is like the team basically has a choice whether or not they want to proceed with a certain player, knowing approximately what they're going to command should it get all the way to an arbitration hearing. It's kind of complicated, but anyway, the point is the Giants' payroll in 2021 was approximately $162 million, and that's down from a high of around $200 million when they were at their peak not too long ago. So to only have about $45 million committed for next year means, assuming that ownership kind of wants to top out at a maximum of around $200 million, and we don't know that for sure. They could blow past it if the correct opportunities come into play. And also the luxury tax has kind of functioned as a cap. Even though it's not a cap, it's just you're taxed beyond a certain amount of payroll. And anyway, the collective bargaining agreement is expiring this December 1st, so about a month from now. And the luxury tax threshold may be eliminated, it may be changed, and so that's something to keep in mind. But anyway, assuming all that, the Giants have, let's just call it $150 million that they could spend for 2022. That's just the individual year's salary for however many players. Now, the thing to know is that they have to fill out pretty much an entire starting rotation. So when you ask like general free agency thoughts and predictions, they're going to be super, super active in the starting pitcher market. They absolutely have to be because they don't, like, if you look at Fangraphs projecting roster resource, which is on Fangraphs, but it's an independent kind of thing. If you look at their projected rotation for the Giants in 2022, based on who they currently have, the rotation goes Logan Webb, great, Sammy Long, Tyler Beede, Kervin Castro, Sean Jelly. Now, the only guy who figures to actually be in that starting rotation on opening day is Logan Webb. And so, yeah, they need at least 4 starting pitchers and good ones potentially. So that's my number one thought, is that they're going to have to bring in some good starting pitchers. Kevin Gausman is the guy who pops into my mind immediately because he's good and he has pitched for the Giants for the last 2 years. And I think there's mutual admiration. He likes it here. He likes pitching on the West because he grew up in Denver, in the Denver area, and he likes pitching, being able to go pitch in Colorado in front of friends and family and being close to family. Colorado not that far away. Gausman previously has played for the Reds, the Braves, and the Orioles. So anyway, he likes it over here. So that's one of my first thoughts, is that I do think the Giants are going to try to find a way, and ultimately I do think they will find a way to bring back Kevin Gausman, but it's not going to be cheap. He has established himself as kind of a front-line starter, even though it was a little bit wobbly in the second half of the season. It was a little bit wobbly in his one playoff start, but at the same time, he's a good pitcher. The Giants have pitching spots to fill out, so I would expect Kevin Gausman to be back on a hefty contract. So anyway, this is actually a really significant question. So coming up next, we're going to continue to answer this. I'm going to start getting a little more specific about some other areas and free agents. So stay tuned for that. But first, does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends log in for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. All right. As promised, we're going to continue answering this question about general free agent thoughts and predictions that Aaron asked. And before we get into that, thanks again, though, for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, now including YouTube as well. Anyway, just continuing to get into that question, as I said, they're going to have to fill out a starting rotation. And I think, when you look at the fact that it's just Logan Webb for now, that means they're going to have to kind of shop at the top of the market a little bit, right? Because you can't, kind of this year they did roll the dice and have a lot of guys who were boom or bust in a sense. I think we knew Kevin Gausman was probably going to be good again, but Anthony DeSclafani, kind of a risk coming off a down year. Alex Wood, kind of a risk coming off injuries and a down year. And the fact is, though, that they must have a lot of confidence in their ability to do this because they've had so much success. Kevin Gausman was another guy who was successful with the Giants bringing him over when they initially signed him. It was a 1-year, $9 million deal prior to the 2020 season. Ton of success with that. They had success with Drew Smyly, Kevin Gausman a second time, Anthony DeSclafani, Alex Wood. And so, yeah, they've got to have a lot of belief in their ability to find these kind of undervalued guys. And I would expect pitchers are like knocking down the door trying to sign with the Giants because they've been able to fix guys and send them back out onto the market in line for huge raises. So this quote, though, from Farhan Zaidi from the other day about this, I thought was worth talking about. He said, quote, "You look at the list of free agents, and there are some names on that list who have had a lot of success in the past and maybe dealt with injuries this year or underperformed for whatever reason. I think when you've got to fill out 4 spots in your rotation, you're certainly going to look at that segment of the market." So there you have it. Like, we're going to see some signings of guys who are coming off down years. And I think they absolutely deserve the benefit of the doubt here in their ability to get the most out of these guys. Some guys who just jump off the page for me: Justin Verlander missed the year with, I think it was Tommy John surgery, but man, has he had success in the past coming off a down year. And I don't know if he's still pitching for another new contract or if he just wants one last shot and wants to sign with a team that's absolutely ready right now. But the Giants kind of proved they are, right? They won 107 games. And then we've got, how about Noah Syndergaard coming off a completely lost year? I think he pitched like 1 inning this season towards the end of the year. So he's coming back attempting to be healthy. But yeah, it was a lost year for Syndergaard, but obviously success in the past. James Paxton missed the year, I think it was Tommy John surgery. So I don't know if he's ready or not, but he's a name. I mentioned him a lot last offseason. And I said they probably were concerned about his health, and sure enough, he missed the year with an arm injury. Chris Archer, and on and on. There are several names to look through. Zach Greinke and Danny Duffy, Colin McHugh, John Gray. I mean, these are guys, some of those guys, McHugh and Gray, have had success recently, like this year, so that doesn't exactly fall into that mold. But anyway, expect a lot of activity in the starting pitcher market. That's basically the gist of it. And so moving on to the offense, we're going to transition to another question. Michael asked, what's the strategy for improving the offense? Stay the course, start incorporating prospects like Bart, package prospects in a trade for a proven bat, or spend on a big free agent like Bryant or Marte or Marcus Semien? Well, I think it's going to be that they're going to explore all avenues. I don't think they're going to have one plan and only go down that road. I think everything you mentioned is probably in play. Now, you mentioned stay the course. I just want to point out that the Giants' offense was, by weighted runs created plus, the second best offense in Major League Baseball behind only the Houston Astros, which is just incredible when you look at the players that they had. They got the most out of veterans who seemed to be in decline, and then they mixed and matched with kind of non-star level pieces and got this type of production. Even with some down years, like Mike Yastrzemski was supposed to be maybe their best player, and he had definitely a down year for him. But when we're talking, I want to tie this in with free agency. They don't have as many departures pending like they do in the starting rotation, but they do have some. And we've talked a lot about Buster Posey and there being a club option. Assuming he wants to keep playing, they can just pick that up and bring him back. So I'm not too concerned about the catcher position. But Brandon Belt is, for me, a big, notable free agent name to pay attention to. And they can put the qualifying offer on him. It's a 1-year, $18.4 million offer, and Belt can accept it or reject it or work something else out with the Giants or another team. So he's worth more than the qualifying offer, so I really doubt he would accept it. When we look back at the weighted runs created plus leaders since 2020, since the start of the short 2020 season, so this year and last year, and among all players with at least 550 plate appearances, the list of leaders in this category goes Juan Soto, Bryce Harper, Brandon Belt, Ronald Acuna Jr., Fernando Tatis Jr., Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Freddie Freeman, Corey Seager, Aaron Judge. Unbelievable. That is an awesome list of some of the best offensive players in the game, and there's Brandon Belt at number 3. And so losing him would be a big blow, and he wants to be a Giant for life. He's basically said this, and the Giants have every reason to want him back. It would be a very significant hole at that position if he were to leave. Now, could they fill that hole? Yes, I think there are a bunch of different ways they could do it. They could platoon LaMonte Wade Jr. and Darin Ruf. They could platoon Tommy LaStella and Darin Ruf, or Tommy LaStella, Wilmer Flores, and there are all kinds of kind of permutations there. But I think they would be losing something significant with the loss of Brandon Belt. As we saw when he went down, they really weren't the same team towards the end of the year and into the playoffs offensively. And also defensively, he's such a good defensive first baseman that it's a big loss defensively as well. But if this were to happen, I'm sure they're prepared for that. If he were to sign with another team, I think, like I said, you could move potentially LaStella over to first base. I know some of you are thinking LaStella at first base. Yeah, I mean, he's not the right size maybe, but I think the bat potentially plays, although it wasn't very good this year. But anyway, then you could try to sign a Marcus Semien and have him play second base. It would free up another position where you could spend that money you were going to spend on Brandon Belt. So the point is to have contingency plans, and I think they will and they do. But the best thing that they could do to help their offense would be first bringing back Buster Posey and Brandon Belt. I think those two guys, I mean, obviously Posey, it's just a matter of is he intent on playing? But Brandon Belt, that would just be a significant loss at that position. So in terms of, you asked about Joey Bart and incorporating prospects. That's an important point, and one that Zaidi himself brought up when he was meeting with the media after the season, and also in a podcast I listened to with Alex Pavlovich, and also a podcast with Tim Kawakami of The Athletic. And Zaidi he's mentioned this several times, and not just now, but in his first days as president of baseball operations and last offseason too, that they continuously want to create opportunities for young players. They don't want to block players out from having a chance to kind of show up at the major league level and blossom. And he specifically mentioned Steven Duggar, Tyro Estrada, Joey Bart, Elliot Ramos. Elliot Ramos needs to be added to the 40-man roster this year to protect him from the Rule 5 draft. The one thing to keep in mind is that we're probably going to have a universal DH starting in 2022. Like it or hate it, it's probably coming because baseball wants it, the players want it, and the collective bargaining agreement, as I said, is expiring in a month. And so that's very likely to be something that gets added into the structure of Major League Baseball. And having a DH spot, I think, would potentially allow teams to carry 3 catchers a little bit easier. And it would be a way to let Joey Bart get some playing time behind the plate, or just put him in as the DH and have Bart and Posey potentially in a lineup. So I do think that Bart playing more in 2022 is a distinct possibility. And if they legitimately don't see that happening and they won't be able to give him those plate appearances, I think that you definitely consider a trade. And if they make a trade with prospects, I think it would not so much be for a proven bat. It would be for a young, controllable pitcher. That's just my inclination, given how many needs they have on the pitching side. So coming up next, there are more free agent questions, more specific questions about specific players. So we will get into all of that next. But first, did you know that Built Bar has so many delicious flavors? There's really something for everyone. And when you talk to a Built Bar fan, they're definitely passionate about their favorites. If you don't know the Built Bar flavors, you are missing out. Coconut, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry, orange, cookies and cream, German chocolate. My favorite flavor is raspberry, but all of us Locked On hosts have a bunch of different favorites because each and every one is absolutely delicious. And importantly to me, they're healthy too. Just 4 to 5 grams of sugar to go along with 17 to 18 grams of protein, just 130 to 180 calories. Go to BuiltBar.com right now and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off your next order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. All right, here we go. More specific questions. Continuing to answer Michael's question, just the last part of it there. Spend on a big free agent like Bryant, Marte, or Simeon. It's definitely possible. I think, like I said initially, they're going to explore each and every possibility, and they have all this money to spend. And if they believe the right player is out there, they are going to make their move. And I keep reminding people of this, but remember, they tried to sign Bryce Harper. There's like a myth, in my opinion, going around that they're trying to sign Harper was just for show, right? They didn't actually want to sign him. They just wanted people to think that they tried to sign him. That's a bunch of malarkey. They offered him reportedly $310 million. He ended up signing for $330 with an additional year. So it's a bunch of malarkey. Like, they don't know what the other offer is. They had their valuation. I forget how many years. I want to say it was 12 years, $310 million. And the reason that they did that, and the reason that I think that this offseason presents the potential for something similar, is that Harper was 26, a extremely talented player at a young age. That is the combination that the Giants and Farhan Zaidi are looking at when they make a major move like that, or when they make a major offer like that. Like, if you're looking at a guy who's already 31, you're not going to offer him that kind of cash, right? But the deal is that this offseason, there are potentially some guys who could fall into that category. Carlos Correa is 27. Corey Seager is 27. To me, those are kind of the big fish of the offensive side of things this winter, given their age and talent. And obviously, the Giants have a shortstop in Brandon Crawford, but could they play second or third, or could they move around? You've got Trevor Story with elite speed. Could you potentially be interested in him and have him play some outfield? There are a lot of talented players in the free agent class. Marcus Semien has proven that he can play shortstop and second base. Starling Marte is older, so I think you could potentially get a little bit of a bargain because he's not going to command that kind of money, but the performance has been up there, and it's been borderline elite when you factor in base running and offense and defense. The package has been really good. And so they're going to have a lot of options. And so I think we're going to see a little bit of everything. You're going to see the Giants name, we're going to hear rumors that the Giants are interested in pretty much every single player who's out there in free agency right now. And so my general prediction, it's hard to predict that they're going to land one of these elite top of the market players, but also this would be an offseason. If ever there was an offseason where they might do that, I think this would be that offseason, given how much freed up money they have. Although importantly, I do want to point out that Farhan Zaidi said in one of these podcasts I was just referencing, he was basically talking about how when you look at how the teams that were still playing, and at that point there were still 4 teams, Astros, Red Sox, Braves, and Dodgers, when he was talking about how when you look at how those rosters were built, a lot of our focus goes on the final kind of pieces, or, like the Braves, we talk a lot about their deadline acquisitions in the outfield. Even though none of those guys are really star players, it has worked out well for them. But he said the reason that they're here is a collection of moves, right? It's not just the one fancy, shiny move, but it's all the moves that have gone into putting that team in place. And he makes a great point there, I think, because we do think about, the Dodgers and Mookie Betts or Max Scherzer, right? But think about the rest of that team and how, like Cody Bellinger and Corey Seager and Walker Buehler and on and on and on, the infrastructure of the team from the ground up. And he said, so we have to be really disciplined in not trying to just make that one splashy move necessarily, but instead just continuing to make smart baseball decisions and then you'll look up and see just a deep and talented roster that's just winning a ton of games. And that's basically what we saw this season from the Giants. And so while it's tempting for me to say, yeah, they're going to go make this big splash, they're not going to do it out of emotion. That is just not how they operate. They are going to be methodical, and they're going to make what they think are smart baseball decisions, regardless of what they think the reaction of the fans is going to be. And so that's why I'd kind of hedge against getting like too excited, saying that the reason they're going to make a big splash is because they have all this money. I'm not sure that's how they're going to do it. They're just going to look at guys and they're going to make sure that they're making that the price is right for them. They don't feel like they're going to get into a contract that's going to be severely bloated and underwater and looking like an albatross in a few years. They don't want to be in that position because that's a tough position to be in. It's kind of what led to the Giants having the problems that they've had for the last 4 years before, this year when they won 107 games. They had like one of the top payrolls in the game and one of the worst records in the game in 2017. And that is not a position you want to be in. And so they're going to be methodical in their valuations. And so far it's been working. So I would just expect more of the same, but more activity than ever, simply because they have so many spots to fill. But anyway, there are more questions here, and it's just hard for me to say right now, like, what's the top acquisition in free agency going to be. I would lean towards a pitcher just because they have so many spots to fill. So I don't know, maybe a Max Scherzer or someone like that. I don't know. Anyway, that is all the time we have for today. I really hope you enjoyed this Mailbag Monday. It's going to be an ongoing tradition, so thank you so much for listening. We do these shows every single weekday through mid-December, and then we're going to slow down a little bit, I think 3 days a week, something like that. But anyway, thanks again for making Locked On Giants your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Now check out Locked On MLB Prospects. Aram Layton hosts Locked On MLB Prospects, and he goes deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow each and every day. It is free and available on all platforms as well. Once again, my name is Ben Kaspick. Please check me out on Twitter at Ben Kaspick. That's Kaspick. If you like this show, please consider rating it or leaving a review. It helps me out so much, so thank you in advance. Thank you to everyone who's done so already. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button, like, and comment as well. Thank you so much in advance. Anyway, I can't wait to be with you again tomorrow. Thanks again for listening. Stay Locked On Giants.